Born ready.
Da-da-da-da-da! Charge. Thanks, buddy. All right, baseball show here, bi-weekly. Nameco and Dustin here. Of course, we got all our football stuff up, but this, we're talking about baseball. Still trying to win you a championship. And if you're in a rotisserie league, Dustin's got a tip for you.
We had a forum post the other day that made me think about, giving this little bit of advice. It came from Lube Job, but basically the gist of the post was, he's in a roto league. He has a huge lead in steals. He has Starling Marte on his team, and this is a 5x5 roto league. So Marte, yes, he helps you in some of the other categories like runs and not a terrible batting average, but really it's steals is where he really helps you. So it makes sense for him to trade him right now. He needs some help in saves, so it might make sense to trade him for a decent saves guy like Grilly or something like that. And in some cases, you wouldn't normally do that, trade a guy like Marte for a guy like Grilly, but in this case, it makes sense because you don't need the steals. Marte's not really helping you out that much at this point since you have such a big lead. So take a look at your standings, see if there's anything like that where, even the opposite side of that. If you're 50 home runs down from the guy in front of you and you have a guy that has decent power, you might want to trade him because you're not going to get any more points there. All
right, so let's take a look at guys that you don't need to trade that should help you out in all leagues. And the first one we're going to talk about is the captain. That's Derek Jeter. He's back. He's only owned in 65% of leagues, which is kind of nuts. He's such a big name recognition for the fact alone. Who knows if he's going to bat 300 or not? He should be somewhat productive. Shortstop isn't the deepest position, but if you need to pick him up, even if you don't need to start him right now. And if he starts off hot, the trade value you can get for a Derek Jeter playing well is ridiculous. There's some crazy Yankees fan in your league, so just 65% of leagues should be owning a lot more.
And he just got called up too, so
now's the time.
It's not going to last much longer at this point. He'll be almost 100% owned very soon, so run to your computers if he's available. Young guy I want to talk about, Martin, youngster for Texas, outfielder, owning 50% of leagues right now. He's doing pretty well across the board. Take a look at his stats. He was decent in the minors. I don't think he's really going to blow things out of the water, but he's a young guy, big upside, guy that you can get excited about, and a guy that if he does continue to play well, could have some trade value around him because everyone loves to trade for that next big young prospect. So his numbers are definitely good enough, and he has a proven enough track record to where I think he's a must-add in all leagues at this point.
The next guy's top 10 in home runs, and he's only owned in 60% of leagues. It seems kind of nuts, but it's Raul Ibanez. The old man's got 22 bombs on the year. At this point, 22 home runs, if you need any help and power whatsoever, just go ahead and grab him. 22 bombs, that's a lot of power.
We got another old man, the third old man in the must-adds in all leagues. That's Alfonso Soriano.
It's just so weird that he's old. Let me just put it out there.
He is old. Only on 65% of leagues. Here's the thing, and just by what we're seeing here already, I think this year, for some reason, a lot of people are, maybe it was what Mike Trout and Harper did last year. Everyone's looking for those youngsters coming up and having big impacts. But don't forget about the old guys that can still do it. Yes, they're not going to give you a ton of trade value. They're kind of boring guys to have on your team as far as just what their ceilings are. But they can still help your team. Soriano's a guy that's on a hot streak right now. Pick him up and ride it out and see if he can stay healthy.
All right, the next guy I'm going to talk about is also owned in only 60% of leagues, and that's Jason Worth. And, I think he gets a lot of disrespect in fantasy. He's not great. Don't get me wrong. He's not like an amazing player. But I think a lot of disrespect comes from everyone knows the Nationals well overpaid him. But you know what? You ain't paying that money. Who cares for the fantasy team? If you need help over the last month, he's been batting a little over 300. So you got to like that out of Jason Worth. Again, only owned in 60% of leagues. If you need help in outfield, he's a guy that should be owned in more leagues than that.
Another guy that I can't believe isn't owned in more leagues is Koji Uehara, the relief pitcher for Boston. It doesn't make any sense. He's only on 65% of leagues. He's taken over that job, and there's really no reason to think that he's not going to have it for the rest of the year. And he has a sub-2 ERA in a big market team. I don't know why people aren't running their computers and picking this guy up. If you need saves or at all need a relief pitcher, or you have a roster spot that you can use to pick him up, instant trade value for you.
Just get him. There's somebody on your team you should be. If he's in your league, get him.
Get him.
All right, let's take a look at those deeper leagues. And the first one I'm talking about is Michael Brantley. He's doing exactly what we thought he would do, a decent average, decent power, throws in some bags. So again, in deeper leagues, in 35% of leagues, he should be owned in more than that. In those 14, 16-team mixed leagues, he's definitely worthy of a roster spot.
Next, I got a young starting pitcher for you, and that's Jose Quintana, starter for the White Sox. He's only on 15% of leagues. When I'm looking at the waiver wire and looking for starting pitchers to think about picking up, it's always young arms with decent K counts, and he's the guy that, he fits that build. He has a decent ERA. He's not doing anything amazing, but he's definitely a guy that can help a lot of fantasy teams, and I don't understand why not more people are noticing him and picking him up.
All right, the next guy's another pitcher, and he's owned 15% of leagues, and that's Ramirez on Seattle out of Nicaragua. This is the next young arm that just came up. The Gerrit Cole, getting some hype, Singrati, things like that. He's been getting some hype, so again, this is just a good guy to pick up. Now, people might not be going crazy because he gave up, 7 earned today?
7 earned.
7 earned today, but that's his first outing. This is definitely a guy in deeper leagues. If you need some help with pitching, it's a young arm with upside. He has 1 or 2 good outings. Again, as we've been saying all show, instant trade bait.
Jeremy Hefner is another guy, young arm with upside, only on 25% of leagues. I think he's being kind of overshadowed out there with the Mets as far as with what Harvey's doing. I think if Harvey wasn't out there, Hefner might be getting a little bit more hype, but decent stats in the minors. He's pitching pretty well so far in the majors, almost a K per inning in the last month. You got to like that. Just another guy to take a look at if you need some help with your arms.
Not on this list, Ike Davis, just throwing it out there. All right, next guys.
Just got called back up.
Next guys. I told you, Adam Dunn 2.0. Edinson Volquez is the next guy talking about. Only owned in 10% of leagues, which is kind of nuts, we feel. He's in his last month, he's been about a K per inning, an ERA slightly over 3. He did have solid years in the past. Granted, past was, 4 or 5 seasons ago, but he's still a decent big name pitcher. If you're in those deep leagues, he's a guy that's been pitching well. Great spot start against a team like the Marlins or another terrible hitting team.
And he is only 30 at this point. There's still a chance that he can figure it out. It's not like he's 35 or something like that. Nick Franklin's the next guy I want to talk about. A youngster for Seattle. He's owned about 50% of leagues right now. I don't think he's a must-add in all leagues because it depends on your team, but I think he's a great utility guy, middle infielder. He has second base, shortstop eligibility, so you got to like that. And I do like that he has 16 extra base hits already and 149 at-bats this season.
Dustin loves his doubles.
I love my doubles, but decent amount of home runs as well. But for a middle infielder.
Perfect guy in those daily leagues with that dual eligibility as well if you have a guy sitting and whatnot.
Certainly.
All right, one last guy to keep an eye on.
And that's Adam Eaton.
We've talked about him a lot.
He's owned in 35% of leagues, so obviously, it's a weird guy to say to just keep an eye on. And if you really don't want to risk missing out on him, go ahead and pick him up now. But, I do think it's just a keep an eye on thing at this point because at this point in his career, if you lose 3 months, you haven't really played in the bigs at all. I feel like losing those 3 months is a big deal. I think he's going to come in maybe a little bit rusty, but once he gets things going, he could finish strong. So I think it depends on if you're willing to take a gamble, but I do think in a lot of leagues he is worth picking up right now, especially in any type of keeper or dynasty, but keep a very close eye on him.
So that's it. As we said, we have all of our football stuff up right now, even at top 200.
200.
That's a lot of people we ranked. And with that said, we have our videos, a bunch of articles on the site that feel free to go on. We did some writing or typing or whatever, but posted articles, great stuff, all of our thoughts. Follow us on Twitter @FantasyAdvice. For the CEO and President, I'm Brett Namco. This is Dustin Barkley.
And the forums.